Kicking off the list at number 10, the Tower of London. I have been here myself. I did a little tour, took some photos, and I had no idea how dark the history really was here. Kings were beheaded, queens were horribly beheaded. Witnessing an apparition is pretty common in the Tower of London, of course, with its grim history. A common sighting is Thomas Becket, a martyred saint, and of course the Anne Boleyn. If you visit the Tower of London, you might catch a glimpse of the second wife of King Henry VIII. Anne Boleyn was found guilty of treason. She had been charged with having sexual relationships with 5 others, including Lord Rochford, aka her brother George Boleyn. Yeah, a lot of tea in that one. Some Game of Thrones stuff, apparently. She had also apparently had relations with Sir Henry Norris, the king's groom of the stool, and on top of all this, Anne was also found guilty of conspiring to kill her husband. Now, it has since been proven that all of these crimes were a bunch of rubbish. Anne wasn't even around when all these things even took place. She was still recovering from the birth of her daughter, future Elizabeth I, in October 1533. So there's no way she's fooling around with the groom of the stool, you know what I mean? She was busy at the time. All parties involved were still executed on Tower Hill in May 1563, and then 2 days later, Anne Boleyn was executed for her crimes. A lot of dark history. Number 9, Transylvania. Heading over to Romania. I often forget that Transylvania is a real place with real history, and not just an animated Adam Sandler family film. One of the most famous castles in Transylvania is Bran Castle. This is the castle most commonly associated with Dracula, with Bram Stoker's Dracula. And of course it belonged to the very real Queen Marie. The castle has seen many horrors back in the Middle Ages, and locals believing in undead souls that haunt villagers at night, yeah, that surely doesn't help you sleep. You may have heard of Vlad the Impaler, aka Vlad Dracula. Well, this guy was a brutal ruler. His methods of punishment back in the mid-1400s were awful. As his name hints towards, they were specific. Transylvania is also home to the haunted Hoai Bakui Forest, a paranormal hotspot. Many claim a UFO also touched down in the middle of the 20th century over this forest too. So we got vampires, the undead, and UFOs, all in Transylvania. What a trip. Nice, let's do it. Let's go visit, sounds fun. Number 8, the Terracotta Army. The tomb of Emperor Qi Shi Huang, China's first emperor. In this tomb, we can find 6,000 statues, but they all have unique carvings on their face, as if to suggest they are all custom statues accurately representing a soldier. All 6,000. That's amazing, that's impressive. Back in 1974, farmers were digging up a well. This was 20 miles east of Xi'an, and they stumbled upon a pit that uncovered all of this history. They found this entire burial chamber. We believe there were around 700,000 workers. They were putting together this masterpiece for 3 decades. Archaeologists have discovered 8,000 statues in total, with horses and chariots, the whole shebang, and of course the emperor's tomb. A grim detail here is that in the emperor's tomb, streams of mercury were put around the floor of his burial chamber. And in 2005, over 4,000 samples all tested positive for mercury. So to this day, less than 1% of his tomb has actually been excavated. It's simply too dangerous. The emperor also believed that after he had passed, he would have to face the spirits of his enemies again. So he wanted to be prepared even after death, hence the army. The emperor decided to close the tomb though before the workers even had a chance to get out. He was worried his enemies had already found out, so he just trapped them in there. It's horrible. So yeah, there's a lot of statues and dark histories in this one. Number 7, Turkey Gladiator Arena. Yes, another arena, another staple in history, filled with gruesome combat, all in the name of entertainment. An 1,800-year-old arena was discovered back in 2020 while we were all, stuck inside doing nothing. Meanwhile, a 90-meter wide amphitheater was found in the ancient city of Mastura. Its purpose was thought to be the same as the Roman Colosseum, to host these massive professional gladiator events with wild animals, and it turns out that's exactly the case. Yeah, humans are the same everywhere. This was around 200 AD when the Severan dynasty was ruling the Roman Empire. If betting on animal fights was your thing, you'd have to travel all the way to this place to do so. Yeah, hope you have trail shoes and good knees. I wouldn't make it. No way. I'd be like, yeah, place some bets for me. I am not going anywhere. Have you seen that hill? No way. Number 6, Highgate Cemetery. Heading over to England yet again. London's Highgate Cemetery is beautiful, but back in the early 1800s, it was booming. The city's population was growing, meaning that more people were dying, of course. So now we needed more land for bodies. Graves were being placed in between houses and shops. Not really ideal when it comes to a loved one being buried. So Parliament decided to step in and help out. They built 7 cemeteries, and the third was built in 1839, and that was Highgate Cemetery. Come 1854, the cemetery was full. It was beautiful. Everybody wanted to be buried there. What an odd desire that is. But look at it. How inviting is that? It was so popular that they added another 20 acres. More bodies, No problem, let's do it. But by the time World War II came along, the cemetery was completely abandoned, and in 1960 the cemetery was officially closed. Buildings began to fall onto themselves, the landscaping is now just a mess. It certainly looks the part now, it looks like a haunted cemetery. And today many stories are passed around of these men in dark robes, said to practice dark rituals in Highgate. Now it's not uncommon to see apparitions in a cemetery, but red-eyed demons? Highgate's another level, my friends. Number 5, the Crooked Forest. Forests are already creepy. This one looks straight out of a Tim Burton film. Let's talk about it. The Crooked Forest, Poland. There's around 400 odd-shaped pine trees near the town Gryfino. These trees are about 90 years old, and all these trees from the base, they immediately go towards the north and they slowly curve back towards the sky. Almost like an upside down question mark. Despite the odd bend, these trees are otherwise healthy. There's been many theories, but none of them really stick as to why these trees look that way. Some suggest that it was a gravitational anomaly, but that's a little too far-fetched. This isn't, interstellar. Other theories claim there were heavy snowfalls that weighed down the branches, and then they just, slowly corrected themselves, but why is it just a select amount? I live in Canada, we have lots of snow. I've never seen any Sleepy Hollow trees in my entire life. My favorite theory is that farmers were trying to make the tree curved on purpose to make stronger wheels. The grain direction would have made for natural curved wheels, which means stronger. Again, seems a little too far-fetched. I don't know, I don't think growing a 90-year-old tree is the best way to make a wheel. But again, nobody knows. What are your thoughts? Comment down below. Number 4, Valley of the Kings. We can't not include ancient Egyptian curses on this list. Terrifying places more mysterious than the Bermuda? Yeah, how about a pharaoh curse? Let's do it. Pharaohs of Egypt. It was said any thieves who enter or disturb the dead in Egypt shall be cursed and set to perish. How fun is that? Well, this applies to archaeologists too. Howard Carter and his team back in the 1920s had come across the discovery of a lifetime. They found the tomb of King Tut, launching the study of Egyptology. And we're still finding tombs in Egypt to this day. Even last year we found like 216 tombs. It was crazy. That place is a literal treasure chest. The thing is, after the discovery, some researchers on Carter's team started to feel under the weather. Maybe there was a bug going around, maybe it was too hot, or maybe it was the curse of the pharaoh. Yeah, some men on his team perished from blood diseases or undisclosed circumstances. They're just like, yeah, we're not gonna tell you. Many of these ancient tombs have warnings. I think it's time we start listening to those. Number 3, Newgrange Tomb. Okay, time to get a little weird. Over in Ireland, there's a tomb built by Egyptians. It's called Newgrange, and it's as old as the pyramids, so the belief is that Egyptians also built this one. Checks out, makes sense. It was first discovered back in the late 1700s, and it's been closed ever since. It's a mystery who or what is inside, but the folklore surrounding the tomb is too good not to talk about. See, locals believe that this tomb is a gateway to another realm, and that it was built by goblins. Yeah, and if and when this tomb is open, it's believed goblins will just all of a sudden come rushing out, like Harry Potter style. Evil goblins, that is, might I add. Wouldn't it be cool if goblins actually ran out? We're like, oh, really, this whole time? That explains the pyramids. That explains so much. Number 2, Bangor Fort. Back in the 16th century, King Madho built the massive Bangor Fort in India. The population of this small town was around 1,000 at the time. It was a beautiful fort. Many considered this a luxury, of course, rightfully so. This thing looks like a set piece from Game of Thrones. It's beautiful. The legend has it that Princess Ratnavati, who at the time was living in the luxurious fort, she was the talk of the town. All these dudes were proposing left, right, and center, all trying to get her attention. Princes from all over would come in and try and take her hand. Then one day when visiting town, a magician named Scindia saw the princess shopping for perfumes, so he planned on using the black magic of Vishakaran on the princess. So he mixed it with the perfume that she was looking at, but it didn't work out. His plan failed. The princess caught on and she smashed the perfume at his feet and then left. And as the bottle broke apart, the magician then cursed the entire fort and those living inside of it. Yep, started okay, got even worse. Only days later, a war erupted around the fort and there were many casualties. To this day, Bangor Fort is said to be extremely haunted. And finally, number 1, Houska Castle. Yes, the demon castle. Let's do it. According to folklore, the Houska Castle, which is located just north of Prague in Czech Republic, is built over a bottomless pit that leads directly into hell. Yeah, the legend claims the 13th century King Ottokar II offered a pardon to any prisoner who agreed to be lowered into the pit in order to report what was down there. The first prisoner who was lowered into the pit only lasted 30 seconds before he started screaming in fear. Sounds pretty horrible. Whatever he saw was no good. Maybe it was a cave spider. That ought to do it for me. Legend goes that when he was brought back up, his hair turned white and he apparently saw these half-human, half-demon creatures that were flying through the darkness with scaly wings. Nice. That's literally the pits of hell. The castle was built over a hole without things like a water source or any kitchens, anything like that, and it's said they did this because it wasn't actually meant to be used by humans, but rather it was meant to capture the demons should they ever rise from this mysterious hole. Nice. Even demons have a place to crash. How lovely is that? We can all sleep knowing that the demons are okay. They're all comfortable. We're good.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Mezgor. This is a location in Russia that finds its home in the Ural Mountains. This little town is top secret and is completely forbidden to any kind of visitor. This is said to be because the town is apparently home to Russia's nuclear missiles, and the rules are so strict that people aren't even allowed near the town or in its vicinity. There are also rumors that suggest this town contains Mount Yamantau, and that inside this mountain there is the Russian government's extensive bunker, making this just another reason why this town is completely cut off to anyone who isn't a very high-ranking official. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Lascaux Cave. This cave is located in France, and it got itself the title of being a UNESCO World Heritage Site after its discovery in 1940 due to the incredible prehistoric paintings that can be seen on the walls. Of course, this became a popular tourist destination, and people were jumping at the chance to see these works of art completed by the early humans, but as it turns out, breathing is not good for the art. The carbon monoxide that visitors were expelling was beginning to cause damage to these cave paintings, and of course, once they're gone, there's nothing we can do to get them back. This led to the site being closed to the public in 1963. Now, the only people allowed in are researchers and preservationists who work to make sure the art stays for as long as possible. In our number 8 spot today, we have Fort Knox. The Fort Knox vaults are home to most of the US gold reserves, and it's one of the most heavily guarded places on the entire planet. It's so heavily guarded, in fact, that there isn't one single person who can make it into the vault. This is because there are several combinations that need to be used, and no one knows all of them. There are various members of the staff who know just one of the necessary combinations, which means that without the help of their colleagues, and quite a few of them, there wouldn't be any way for them to gain access. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Vatican Secret Archives. This area is located within the Vatican, and it contains 53 miles of shelves that contain documents relating to the Catholic Church, some dating as far back as the 8th century. These archives contain things like a letter from Mary Queen of Scots when she addressed Pope Sixtus V, where she begged him to help save her from her fate. Some other documents in the archives include ones that detail and relate to the excommunication of Martin Luther. In 1881, these archives were opened only to researchers, but it's not exactly an easy task to get a pass. Anyone who applies and gains one will only have it for 3 months, however, and despite the massive size of the archives, no more than 60 scholars are allowed in at one time. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Svalbard Seed Vault. Deep within a mountain that sits in between Norway and the North Pole sits this vault that is more than 320 feet inside the mountain. This vault holds a massive collection of seeds. Like, we're talking about 890,000 different preserved seed samples from nearly every country in the world. The vault that holds these seeds is made to withstand both man-made and natural disasters, and the seeds inside are meant to be kept safe, so in the case of some sort of huge disaster, the seeds inside would ensure the continuation of a wide variety of diverse food options. The door to this vault is only opened a few times a year, and just a few people are allowed inside in order to deliver seeds to the shelves. In our number 5 spot today, we have DMZ. Despite what this name says and implies, the Korean Demilitarized Zone is perhaps one of the most militarized places ever. This is the location that marks the separation between North and South Korea, and it was established to serve as a sort of buffer zone between the two countries. There are tons of military facilities in this zone, and only high-ranking officials are allowed in. This is exactly what led to the creation of the Civilian Control Line, which is a line that created an additional buffer zone to the Demilitarized Zone, which is meant to further restrict access to any civilians or unauthorized personnel. In our number 4 spot today, we have Surtsey Island. This island was born in 1963. By that, I mean it emerged from the sea in that year just off of the coast of Iceland after 4 years of being formed by an undersea volcano. A brand new island? What could we possibly do with that? While I'm sure humans could find a million and one ways to ruin it, surprisingly we decided to not do that at all. Instead, this island was protected in order to allow scientists to study how new ecosystems form and what happens when there's no human involvement. This means that those who are permitted to go to the island have some super strict rules to adhere to, and it's not like just anyone is allowed to go. One of these rules is no seeds and no using the facilities on the island. The last rule is because one day when scientists found a tomato growing on the island, they were quite confused as to how. It turns out that somebody had gone number 2 not too long before, and thus a new poop tomato was grown from the ground. So let's slice of that for your BLT. In our number 3 spot today we have Snake Island. This island is located in Brazil and is one of the most dangerous in the entire world, and that is because it is absolutely filled with snakes. It is thought that Snake Island came to be when the snakes got trapped as a result of the rising sea levels, which disconnected this island from the mainland. The reason people aren't allowed to visit is obviously to protect the humans who want to go, but also to protect the snakes that live here, as some of them aren't seen anywhere else in the world, likely because of the lack of human interference. There's a critically endangered species of snake called a golden lancehead, and on this island there are about 4,000 of them, which is critical to the species continuing on. As of now, only a select few researchers and the Brazilian Navy are permitted to go to the island. In our number 2 spot today we have Zone Rouge. This area, also referred to as the Red Zone, is an area of France that is one of the most restricted on Earth. Located in northeastern France, it is said that this chain of uninhabited areas was completely destroyed after the events of the First World War. The area contains a mass amount of both human and animal remains, along with way too many unexploded weapons that have gone on to contaminate the surrounding water and land. This has led to the French government prohibiting any kind of activity in the areas that includes any sort of agriculture or settlement. I mean, I would not particularly want to risk it with the undetonated explosives, so it completely makes sense as to why this area would be restricted. In our number 1 spot today we have Pine Gap. This location is in Australia, and it is a heavily guarded and top secret facility. It is said that Pine Gap is actually a joint defense facility between the Australian and the United States governments. It is said that it is operated by both the CIA and NSA, and that it is strictly off limits to anyone not involved or given high security clearance. Apparently, at first this place was said to be a space research center, but now it has become abundantly clear that it is actually used to support the United States in both intelligence as well as military activities. If someone decided to trespass into this top secret area, it would undoubtedly put them in a whole world of trouble.
Starting off this countdown, we have the dog bones. In 2012, archaeologist Karina Gutierrez was excavating a site between the zebra and hippo pens of a zoo in Peru when she came across something very gruesome and shocking. She unearthed more than 100 dogs resting alongside hundreds of humans. This site is said to be more than 900 years old. The human remains showed signs of torture and violence, suggesting that they died a gruesome death. The dogs, on the other hand, were ritually strangled. It's thought that they were buried alongside their owners as part of a ceremony. This is a very, very dark thing to come across. Coming in at number 9, we have the impaled heads. In 2009, a new railway bridge was being created in Sweden's Motala Strom River. That's when archaeologists started to unearth artifacts that were thousands of years old. Over the next few years, more and more artifacts were found in that area. You got animal bones, to tools made from animal bones, to remnants of human skulls, and lastly, mounted skulls. This is said to be the most grisly thing that archaeologists in that area have found. So the skulls were 8,000 years old and were impaled on wooden stakes. All skulls were missing their jawbones and had shown signs of trauma. The male skulls had blunt force trauma to the top of the head, while the female skulls had trauma to the sides and back of their head. But that's not the way that they died. Studies had shown that the wounds had healed, so they did not die immediately after sustaining those injuries. Then at some point, the victims' heads were chopped off and placed on stakes and then submerged underwater in the middle of the lake. They were placed on a stone platform surrounded by animal bones. Again, this is a very traumatizing thing to come across. In our 8th spot, we have the witch prison. In 2016, historians were restoring St. Mary's Chapel at the Kirk of St. Nicholas when they found a weird ring mounted into the wall. Dr. Arthur Winfield, who was leading this project to restore and preserve the chapel, was pretty skeptical about this ring. At first, he thought it was nothing, but then he decided to do some digging. He checked out the city's archives, and that's when he discovered the chapel's dark past. Back in 1597, the church played a crucial role in the Great Witch Hunt. The witches were taken to the chapel and chained up to this ring. This was their last stop before being executed and burned to death. So all of a sudden, this ring became much, much darker. After excavating the area, the bodies of 22 young individuals were unearthed. No remains of the accused witches were found at the site, so it's believed that they were buried elsewhere. This iron ring embedded into the north wall of the chapel is now all that remains of this gruesome past. Moving on to number 6, we have the East Kirk of St. Nicholas. So over the years, more work has been done on the Kirk of St. Nicholas. In 2006 and 2007, it was the site of a major archaeological excavation. Basically, they were excavating the site before the restoration work could be done. Well, upon doing so, they came across the remains of more than 2,000 people. 1,000 were the remains of entire skeletons, so they weren't missing any parts. It's believed that most of the bodies were buried before the 1560s, because after that, the Protestant Reformation in Scotland banned the burials of people inside churches. They also found the graves of 9 young individuals whose body had been laid out together, forming an arc shape. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with El Dorado. The lost city of El Dorado is a famous myth that dates back to the 16th century. El Dorado is the name of a secret city of gold said to be located deep within South America. It's said to be filled with riches beyond your wildest dreams. When the Spanish conquistadors heard of this tale, they tried with all their power to find the city of gold. Alas, they were unsuccessful. But legend goes that archaeologists have discovered this city, and if they have, of course, they don't want this known to the public, at least not yet. Could you imagine what would happen if word got out that there is a city filled with priceless artifacts and gold? People would go nuts and totally ransack the place and ruin its beauty. So that's why it's believed that this place is being kept a secret. That is until they have removed all the treasures and have done all the research that they need to. Coming in at number 4, we have the ancient city of Aleppo. This is known as Syria's second city, and is said to be among the world's oldest continuously inhabited cities. It's filled with ancient structures and has one of the oldest and biggest castles around the world. But here's the thing, this site is now an endangered World Heritage Site. The overpopulation and commercialization is taking a toll on this beautiful ancient city. The new developments and overcrowding have threatened the ancient cityscape, which is like every archaeologist's worst nightmare. Moving on to number 3, we have their labs. After a big dig, archaeologists bring their findings back to the lab. What happens there is pretty private. Every single artifact that they find is washed, dried, identified, labeled, and then cataloged. All of this is done with precision and care. Imagine how much crap they would get in if they dropped or broke an artifact. Obviously, for many reasons, archaeologists like to keep their lab a secret, and I don't blame them. Imagine your personal workspace being available for everyone in the world to see. Coming in at number 2, we have Dead Man's Island. The Dead Man's Island in the UK is now a forbidden island. No one is allowed to travel there unless you receive special permission, but no one wants to go there anyways. Not only is it rumored to be haunted, but it's filled with dead bodies. Basically, the island was the dumping ground for men and boys who died while on board prison ships. They didn't want to bring them back to the mainland, so they buried them on this island to prevent infectious diseases from spreading. But over the years, coastal erosion and the tides unearthed these bodies. In 2016, the remains of more than 200 men were found on the island. They were then reburied. But the changing tides continued to unearth the bodies and wash them out to sea. So they kind of just gave up and left the island and all of its bodies alone. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the lost city of Atlantis. I'm sure you all grew up hearing tales about the magical lost city of Atlantis that lay submerged somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. Well, turns out this city might be real. First, let's look at the history of this city. Atlantis was first described by Plato over 2,000 years ago. He said that the island had over 10,000 chariots and hundreds of bulls and elephants. Then over the years, the city fell and eventually got submerged into the Atlantic Ocean. For centuries, historians debated whether this city was real or not. Then, in 1882, a man named Ignatius Donnelly published a book titled Atlantis, the Antediluvian World. In this book, he claimed that Atlantis was a real place. He even claimed that all the known ancient civilizations originated from Atlantis' Neolithic culture. If this is real, then surely archaeologists and historians are madly searching for the city. In fact, they might have found it already, and similar to El Dorado, they are keeping it a secret.